Hi, I'm Seamless, and today I'm going to show you how to make this sound. There's no clip-based automation in this. I have actually done something that I've almost never done, which is linked the main modulation to the velocity of the note. In Harmor, this is using Harmor doing this. There's a little button over here that just says velocity to volume, and this is on by default, which implies pretty basically that the velocity level of the note will impart to the volume and act like it should. You can also disable that and then use velocity for whatever else you want and have it not actually also affect volume, which is why I have these very low level notes that are actually the same level. What they are, though, is controlling the cutoff volume here, which is the pluck that's causing all of this. So, real quick before we go back into Harmor stuff, let's talk about the outside things, just so we can go back in there. The whole reason there's even outside things is because I'm using this delay, which has moving time base in it. And it's basically like an internal LFO that's moving around the time parameter, which sounds cool. And that's the only thing that the delay 3 thing here is doing that I needed it to do that I wouldn't have been able to do inside the delay that's inside Harmor. It's got the filtering in there because I'm also high passing it so that the bass isn't affected by it so much when it's overly compressed. Just going on the Maximus. Nothing super duper special, pretty OTTer. I actually didn't do anything on the low end because it was pretty well where it needed to be. On the mid end, though, I left some attack on, which is where some of like the thumpy is coming from. Because so like this is subtle as hell. Here's where it sounds like without it. Still pretty like patooey, right? It's still pretty hits hard. You can hear it thump and it's doing good. But now like there's just just a teensy amount of just extra oomph when it's in there. And it's interesting in Maximus when you do this curve, this kind of logarithmic approach, that this attack position actually does something weird. It puts out boosted pre-audio out of there. Because what attack is supposed to do is delay how much like the activation of the compressor, so that if you're doing traditional compression where you're bringing it down, it'll allow like a teensy amount of that attack sharp to still be there, measured in milliseconds, and then bring it down like it's supposed to be for the rest of the signal to be compressed. When you're doing an upward like this, it does that sliver of attack, but it like really amps it up, and that's being used here to kind of contribute to the overall sharpness of it. I'm not doing it on the highs or the lows. Not doing it on the lows because it's barely interacting with the compression at all. I'm not doing it on the highs because I actually wanted the smoothness to remain on top. So instead of it like being like a constant kind of super hard knock, the high end feels a little more kind of smooth almost. Yeah. Okay. Now we can go back into Harmor. Oh yeah. Also EQ, super deensy, like barely even a cut. It's just a cut. Alrighty. Harmor added a synthesizer, right? The thing that's causing, I think, the core of the tone is actually the noise filter going on inside, the resonance on the main thing, right? So this is a pluck, right? There's this going on. Now you can see how like some of the harmonics are on and offing themselves, kind of like per note going on there, and that randomness is what this noise resonance does. The two parameters here change from regular resonance to width, and what it is essentially speed and length. Depth, I guess this is speed. Yeah, so this is depth, like how much of it is being like noised out. And this is how fast, like how big each individual bit is, which makes them longer and then makes it all slower. And do a big enough value that it'll be at the length of whatever note I'm playing, and it won't appear as though it's doing that modulation, but that it's actually just randomizing the levels for fundamental, or rather for the harmonics. Derp. Especially with the pluck going on, it's particularly like you don't really hear any kind of like shifting going on there. Those holes that are just kind of randomly in there make the tone kind of have not just a random change to it, but it's just making a tone happen. It's actually pretty talky sounding in comparison to just a naked tone, and it's just because of those holes. I've also got a phaser going on with the harmonic setting, which is influenced by any other kind of pitch changes going on, and I do have some pitch changes going on, which is the 4 voice unison count going on with the Hertz mode. This I did because this stopped being about like a solid harmonic tone and more about a percussive tone, and that means for kind of editing purposes for me that I actually want a smoother tone to work with, because then I can do things like mess around with the pitch envelope, which is this is creating a pitch pluck, like it's a kick drum, and that's what's creating pretty much all of the impact here. Plus that like lasery sound onto it. I'm particularly fond of like the lasery sound because combined with like the metallic kind of thing being imparted on here from the delay, the noise resonance, and also the harmonizer, which is in the unit order after the filter. So it's like you can actually, if you wanted to change this, you can make it kind of metallic by turning this way up. So it's a little bit like laser metal clanging around, and it kind of sounds like that to me. 4 voices, unison in the down position, which means that it's spreading it evenly as opposed to forward in phase, and not a lot of pitch. Like for Hertz, this is actually a pretty small amount, and then you saw in this unison index mapping window here, rather harmonic unison pitch mapping, the window that's determining how much of this unison is available, like the detune amount per harmonic. Yeah. And that's contributing to the phaser's kind of phase change. I think this is this is all kind of light touch stuff. Like this phaser is not even all the way up, and this is so that like when the filter happens and then the volume change happens, and also in the advanced tab, I turn the grain processing for the envelope shapes all the way down, which means that some of this shape is actually coming out looking like this, and not like some interpolated jaggy version of it. I've also got the ramping almost all the way down. Ramping, if you don't know, is like kind of I actually think it's the same thing as declicking, only it's doing it per harmonic, like a per harmonic amount. The declicking might also do that. It's not super clear to me, but when you start off Harmor by default, ramping's pretty far up there, and what this does create a kind of declicking going on there. So if you want like a super sharp, like actually like beginning when you tell it to begin kind of tone, you need to turn it all the way down. And the whole idea of it being additive is that like while this is a set amount of time going on there, it's even says it up there, 2 milliseconds partial relative, which means that it's ramping it according to how fast it would need to be per like whatever note's going on in your harmonic. Because like over here in this fundamental, this bass tone, right? This is like I don't know, 43 hertz, nice. And so like however long that is of a ramp to come up in volume just fast enough to not create extra harmonics because you're not making the volume change happen faster than its own shape, which for a sine wave is pretty easy to tell, because if you do that at all, it creates extra harmonics, because it's just one harmonic, and that's true for all the rest of these. But like way up here, like 10,000 hertz, that's a lot smaller, that's a lot faster. That means that ramp that could ramp it without distorting it is much smaller. So the ramping is changed size so that it could be as fast or not as fast as it can or needs to be, depending on what harmonic it is. And it tries its best, because if you do go all the way down, it will start to crack up. And those cracks are what happens is the volume change happening faster than the oscillation of the waveform, which is the whole point of all that. Yeah. So if you wanted to actually have percussive impact, long story short, turn down ramping, turn down grain amounts. Yeah. I have harmonic randomness on into phaseness. So like the noise here is changing kind of random level, this changes random phase per harmonic. So per harmonic random level is making it happen, but then also per harmonic random phase is happening, which is 100% preventing it from being a sharp, rigid saw wave sound. Because like here would be that, that's what it would sound like running a naked saw wave through this if I were just through that delay. By the way, that's how much you can hear it doing an effect. Actually, I should do that to this effect. You can do this effect, but not random if you feel like going hard by going into the harmonic phase window, which, like the timbre window, which lets you set the harmonic level for every individual harmonic, the harmonic phase window lets you set the phase for every individual harmonic. So you can set it up so that it would appear to be as whatever one of these randomness is presented with a certain amount of in the spectrum, and then leave it there, and then every note will sound like that. And then this one is basically doing that, but changing it every time you hit a note. Bam. And I am distorting it pretty heavily, but I'm doing a cool thing up here with this effects tab knob fader. Wow, everything about that was wrong until I said it to land in there. The fader, I almost called it a knob again. What's going on? Anyway, what this guy does, I'm doing a very simple version of it, which is where I'm just kind of mixing it up and down, but it also lets you put out the effects in different phases, which is fun. What I'm doing here, though, is I have an envelope going on. When you have it all the way up here like this, up is like this is effects on, this is effects off. And so like, this is 100% dry, and then the way that it presents the numbers isn't super clear, but basically this is saying this is all the effects are off, and then this is the effects are on, and then this envelope is saying cool, the effect is on for a bit, and then boo. So that's how I'm able to pluck the effects inside Harmor without having to resort to breaking this stuff out into external plugins and then using one of those envelope controllers to be doing that envelope stuff to stuff externally, which is normally what I'd have to do to have that kind of control for something like this. But Harmor's cool. Isn't that neat? Speaking of this over here that I have my mouse on, this is the harmonic protection fader. What this does is it prevents any of the things that we're doing from messing with whatever we tell it not to mess with. By default, harmonic protection boop is these last couple harmonics, and it's fine. It's mostly for protecting your sub from being screwed with. I'll have it all the way up because I don't want the sub to be perfect. I do want stuff to happen to it, but I don't want it to happen to it so heavily that it's ever gone. So it's halfway up. You can make your harmonic protection protect other stuff if you wanted to, like, protect some particularly sensitive high frequency things or whatever, but for defaults, sub is pretty good. Helps remember what note you are. Yeah. That's pretty much it for this sound. There wasn't a lot of like ultra complication to it. This is one of these things where like a lot of what additive synthesis gives us saves us an incredible amount of work. Anyway, this sound will be available to download in the description of this video. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.